develop cross-functional relationships inside of your company. The more you understand about how the sausage is made internally, the better you'll be able to have conversations with people on the phone.
Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast on TSE TV. I'm your host, Donal Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we have a great guest. His name is Kyle Coleman, and Kyle is actually the VP of Revenue Growth and Enablement at Clary. We also had his boss on the podcast recently. But today, Kyle's going to talk about how he was able to help grow a business development team from scratch, and how he's helping his business development team right now at Clary, and also how you could grow your business development team from the ground up. Perhaps you're a business development rep or you're an SDR and you want to work for an amazing team, and you're trying to figure out what are the components of an amazing team, or what should I know, what do I don't know, what do I don't know that I should know. Today, Kyle's going to break that down and give you those insights, give you those ideas. I want you to take this, I want you to apply it, and I want you to see success. So let's go ahead and dive into the episode. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hey, how you doing, Donald?
I'm excited to have you. I'm looking forward to picking your brain here a little bit and to have you kind of, do some little shameless plug and talk about some of your success, if you're okay with doing that.
There's nothing I like more than shamelessly plugging myself and my company.
Well, fair enough, man. Well, we're looking forward to diving into all the good stuff and pick your brains on what you have done to help grow successful SDR teams. But before we dive into all the fun stuff, man, tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, man.
So I started my career in B2B tech in 2012 when I got a job at an advertising agency in San Francisco and started supporting client accounts like Dell and VMware and a few huge behemoth companies like that. Pretty quickly realized that advertising scene wasn't as much fun as Mad Men made it seem.
I know,
Wanted to jump over to the wide world of startups, and I got super lucky. Somebody that I met at my agency ended up being the founding sales and marketing person at Looker, a data analytics company based in Santa Cruz, and he recruited me to go over and work with him. So I was the 6th employee back in 2013 at Looker. I was there for 6 years. Company grew from about 6 people to 750 or 800, from about $100,000 in ARR to over 100 million in ARR, and just the right place at the right time. I scaled the SDR team up to about 65 people globally, and then jumped over to Clary in early 2019.
Well, I mean, that's nothing that's not amazing. Should not be applauded. That's amazing there. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
That team grew from 6 to now to 65, right? Looker.
So I was the first SDR. I was a sales and marketing kind of generalist at Looker at the time, but I was the first SDR, and then grew the team up to about 65 globally before I ended up moving on to Clary.
Well, let's do this. Tell us that story. Tell us what happened. There's a lot in there, and I know that took years. There's a lot of gap in between there, right? And people listening to this, they're like, dang, so how did that happen? What do I need to do? We'll break down all of that, but I want to hear that story first. What was it like to grow that team? I mean, did your boss say at one point, hey, bro, I need help making this team better? So here you are. Take the reins, man. Jump on this horse, start doing something.
Yeah, kind of. In the early days at a startup, it's like, who knows, right? The right way to do things. And you just have to try a lot of different things. And I think when I talk to early stage companies, they're sort of reluctant to bring on an SDR function because they feel like it's too soon or something like that. And I think I'm living proof that it's not. Having brought me in so early at the company, it wasn't just to do all like the scut work and the admin work and to fetch coffee and things like that. It really wasn't what I was doing. I was just stamping down on the accelerator to get our message out to the market. This one man, or it became like a 2 or 3 person team pretty quickly at Looker, in the first 12 months or so. We could take all of the wonderful work that our marketing leaders were doing, and we could test the messaging in ways that it's really hard for startups to test because otherwise it's super expensive. But we could use all the tools at our disposal just to get in front of the right people at the right companies and be the feedback loop for the marketing team. And so because of that, we weren't just adding value in setting up appointments and setting up meetings for the sales team. We were valuable on the marketing side, the positioning side, to really help us understand what we needed to do, how we needed to differentiate ourselves in a pretty saturated BI market. And
Yeah.
so we proved our value pretty early, Donald, and that was sort of the reason why success bred more success. And our impact was felt outside of just the kind of traditional top of funnel results column, but really more in the thought leadership and marketing column. And that gave us really firm ground to stand on to say more of us means more of these types of insights, and the quicker that we can get in front of all the right companies and right people at those companies.
So, I mean, at first, I love that idea too, the validation with the marketing folks. When I worked at a small startup, well, they were starting up for a long time, and one of them never got up. But one of the companies I worked for did pretty well there. They did something similar, but I don't think they were as focused as you were. But with their inside sales at the time, they had us. We worked really close with marketing, and I saw that made a huge difference. But I don't think we purposely validated stuff like what you're sharing there. That makes so much sense. I wish I had that insight to take it back and to
Yeah,
be.
it was interesting, and it was different, of course, in
Yeah,
2013, 2014, when the sales lofts and the outreaches of the world didn't exist. And so the market really wasn't saturated. The email market wasn't as saturated as it is now. And
yeah.
so just by brute force, we were able to get a lot of messaging out in the market and really stand out in ways that a lot of other kind of sales teams or SDR teams weren't at the time. So the tactics are different now, and we can talk about that if we get to it. But my thought process is still very much the same. Outbounding for early stage companies is just absolutely critical to understand your ICP, understand your personas, and understand what kind of messaging you should take to market. It's just a rising tide that accelerates the growth of the company.
I'm a new sales leader now. Let's put this in context here. I'm listening to this episode, and I just got brought on to abc.co. I'm making that up, and we're helping to grow the team, and I want to do or replicate to some degree what you did and the success that you had. What's the first thing I should do? I'm the only guy right now, only person.
Yeah. Um, you, Making the first right hire. I know, hiring is pretty much everything all the time, but it's super important this time.
Yeah.
You need to find somebody who has a little bit of experience under their belt, but isn't so senior that they forget how to actually do the work. So you want to find somebody like I was a perfect model, I think, for this person. I was 23 or 24 years old, had a pretty wide range of experience under my belt. Obviously could think for myself, wasn't afraid to take risks and to own the successes as readily as I would own the failures.
Yeah.
Um, but you really need somebody who is just hyper driven and motivated and can act. I needed a little bit of direction. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't just doing my own thing, but given enough autonomy to try my own methodologies, given the right support structure from my management to know that if I fell, they'd be there to catch me. Really just giving me license to go and work hard. And that's what you need. You need somebody who is 100% dedicated to the cause, who can communicate written and verbally really, really well, and who really wants to help make it happen, who is totally bought into the mission of the company.
What are you going to have me do, or should I have this person do day one? I mean, I'm probably jumping around. I had some thoughts here, but would that, I want to get into some of those tactics that you probably would take advantage of right now. Would you get this person like data.com or, I mean, one of these sources, Zoom info to go and pull information, or let's say you created an ICP already. How do you turn them loose to go and find success? And you mentioned Sales Loft. How do you use something like that within in a marketplace where everybody is using a sales loft or outreach.io of some sort?
Sure,
Loaded
sure.
question.
Um, yeah, it's wide ranging. I'm going to start with something you mentioned, which is the ICP.
Yeah.
If you haven't already defined an ICP, do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be exactly by the book as Gartner or Forrester would have you do it, but have an ICP to limit the universe a little bit.
Yeah.
And for me at Looker, it was as simple as this company has X number of employees and X million dollars of funding. They can afford Looker. Like that was it. It's tighter at Clary because there are more specifics around the tech stack they need to have. But just find a way to limit that universe a little bit. That way, when you get responses, you're comparing apples to apples. The responses that you're getting are from similar companies, hopefully from similar personas. So ICP definition, step one.
Yeah.
Step two is working with the product marketing team, not to write outbound emails, because marketers write wonderful blog posts and wonderful white papers and great ebooks. They are not famous for their outbound email writing skills. It's a different skill set. It's a different skill set.
It is.
So I think, and this goes back to kind of the person you hire. The person you hire needs to understand, how best to craft an outbound email. But the product marketing team is super important for how to communicate about the product. The 1 or 2 lines that you have in that outbound email that says what you do, what value you provide, that should come from product marketing. But the call to action, the personalization, all the other stuff, that should come from your outbound SDR's sort of brain, just leaning on best practices that exist. From a tool and tech stack standpoint, I would always 100% of the time recommend that SDRs source their own leads from LinkedIn. It is the most trustworthy data. It's always up to date. And then use another tool like ZoomInfo or like LeadIQ or like Seamless.ai to get contact information. Yeah. And when I say contact information, I mean phone numbers and emails, because despite what you may hear, cold calling is not dead, especially if you, and we can, like, this is a hobby horse of mine. I can't say it strongly enough. Like, getting on the phone is how you either get to hear yes or you get to hear no. And both of those outcomes are totally fine. I would way rather hear no from somebody than somebody ghost me for 6 months and me not know what they want. So anyway, those ZoomInfo, LeadIQ, Seamless AI are typically the best ones, but never buy a lead list. Never. It's a waste of money. I mean, especially if you're selling to other startups where there's so much turnover, like there's no guarantee that somebody who was there a month ago is still there, let alone, 6 months, which is what those lead lists normally guarantee. And then sales acceleration or sales automation or sales engagement, whatever you want to call the outreach and the sales lofts of the world. You gotta bite the bullet and get one of them. Just because and I'm not saying that you should have, 20,000 people actively cadenced in any of those things. You definitely should not. But it makes the organization so much easier for the SDR team. It makes the analysis so much easier, so that when they are reporting back to product marketing or to sales about what they're hearing, what they're feeling, it just makes that reporting so much easier. So that's my full recommendation. I know I said a lot of things, so sorry about that.
That's great. And I like it. And I feel like, we'll go back to one of the things the most important thing I feel that you mentioned in there is that it's not dead. Cold calling is not dead. And I feel, if you point out to me, tell me one startup, even HubSpot, one company or major company that's not doing outreach or some kind of cold outreach at all. Is there anyone that you could think about?
No, I mean, HubSpot would be the main one, but I'm sure they do in some way.
They still do. I mean, it's amazing. Like, that's the crazy part. And I still find that they still have some level of outreach that they're taking advantage of. And that's the crazy part that I think about. And sometimes people fall into the trap of thinking, I'm just going to sit back and wait behind my emails and hope that somebody will jump out and not scare me and tell me they want an appointment. But
right.
You got to,
and I think some of it does depend, of course, on your persona. Maybe when I was at Looker, for example, the more technical people, they didn't like to be on the phone as much as at Clary when we're selling to salespeople who will talk about anything if you give them any opportunity. So it's really nice, and it's refreshing to have those kind of real conversations. And so be mindful about your personas, and but always fold in calling into the outbound process. You have to take an omni-channel approach that includes email and LinkedIn and the phone and direct mail and Twitter and everything. Every single tool that you have in the toolkit, you have to use.
What are the biggest struggles you're seeing that companies face when they're trying to build their BDR team?
I think that too many companies try and do too much of the work for their SDR team.
Give me an example. Sorry.
So I think they make the process a little bit too prescriptive. And I think they write too many scripts for the team that are meant to be rigidly followed instead of used as guides.
Yeah.
And so, and this is kind of going back to your original question about like, how did we scale at Looker? How are we scaling at Clary? And the answer is we provide process frameworks that, if followed letter to the law, great. The person will probably be successful. They'll probably be fine. But within that framework, there is an expectation for autonomy and personalization, and for people to make it their own, and for evolution to come from the bottom up, not the top down. So I think a lot of companies struggle because they expect every single thing that their SDRs are doing to be top down mandates. And it makes no sense, because I haven't been, I haven't been on the phone making calls for 6 years. Why am I going to be better at telling people how to do the tactical sorts of things when they're doing it every single day? So I think that you have to provide process. Don't get me wrong. There
Yeah.
has to be structure, but you have to rely on the people that you hire to be thoughtful, to hire for brains, not just hire people that are just going to be dialing numbers mindlessly, but they have to be the ones who are coming up with how to evolve, and that's the way that you'll change, and that's the way you'll stay ahead of curve.
And I think that's a great insight the way you said it, because I feel, going back to some of the companies I've worked for, the ones that made you feel like just like a little drone, like a robot, like those ones, I saw the burn rate with BDRs or team members was just ridiculous. People came in
Yeah.
and just a revolving door. But where you felt like you were part of something, and especially in a startup where you're developing something, and you come to my boss, and Kyle, and say, Kyle, I thought about this, using this in the cadence or an outreach. What are your thoughts on that? You give me the autonomy to say, do whatever you can to make it work. I mean, that would make me feel like I added value, and I'm making an impact. Am I making sense with that there?
That's exactly right. And you know what else is really cool about it, Donald, is that
Yeah.
people, as I mentioned before, feel very comfortable to share failures. And that's so important as you're trying to figure out what the heck works and what doesn't. And especially as you're building a team, like, you don't want the same people failing the same way, because people are afraid to talk about it. You have to create an environment where people are expected to try new things, and where failure is a rite of passage. And that's what we have, that I take very seriously, and I try and make sure that every single person understands, which is, if you're not failing, then you're not trying enough new things, and you have to continue to push the envelope in order to evolve.
So true on that, man. How long should a process take typically to grow a team? I mean, every company is different, every industry is different. But if I'm this manager again, sales leader, and I'm thinking about, man, I want to get my team to be, I guess, self-sufficient or considered success at this point, how long should that be?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't know if there's any necessarily any definition that'll work for every company, but um, what I will say is that the role of the SDR in particular, and this is true for account executives as well,
Yeah.
is becoming much more thoughtful and much more strategic, and the ramp time, therefore, is increasing longer and longer than it has in the past, and the time that people stay in role should also be increasing for that reason, which is kind of a tough pill to swallow sometimes for really ambitious SDRs. And there will always be people that, have accelerated growth paths, and that's wonderful. Um, but I'm seeing it take up to 6 months probably for people to feel proficient just in the process. And
Yeah.
then probably closer to 9 or 12 months until they're really, really comfortable in the whole, like understanding where Clary sits in the competitive ecosystem, and all the different personas and the nuanced use cases and all that sort of thing. And so once somebody's comfortable and they're productive, if it takes 6, 9, 12 months, then we want to keep them aboard and in that role for about the same amount of time. And so another thing that has to change is the comp plans for SDRs in particular
Hmm.
needs to increase. If you want to keep people, successful people in role, you have to have gradations of different levels that they can achieve that come with different comp plans and different incentives. Otherwise, you're going to lose them to another a sales role at a smaller company or something else, and you're going to end up doing more harm than good and losing all your top performers. So I know I didn't totally answer your question, but I do want to say, like, keeping people in role and incentivizing them to stay in role is a fundamental way to grow your team, because obviously you're not attriting people.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems like, again, hiring is a consistency, a continual thing. You need to always fuel the funnel, but fill your funnel. But in what you're saying, you can keep people longer. What give you an idea of how you use incentive, or how did you help your BDRs at the time to say, I want to stick around and hang around with this with Looker?
Yeah, 100% transparency.
Yeah,
So saying here is what we had 4 levels, what the 4 levels are, and here are the criteria. Here are the quantitative criteria that you need to hit in order to achieve, jump from level 1 to level 2. And here are the qualitative criteria that you need to satisfy. The qualitative stuff you and I and your manager are going to be working on every single week. And the quantitative stuff is effort based mostly, but of course it's also results based, and it's totally in your control. And so if you have that 1-2 punch and you just every single week you're talking about what they're doing well, where they need to improve, what potentially would be holding them back from a promotion, all those sorts of things should be an ongoing conversation. It shouldn't happen once a year or twice a year, or whatever your review cycle is. It should be a constant stream of feedback. And by the way, they should also be giving you feedback so that you're improving as a manager. But that's my general take on it.
with that different tier, were those tiers based on different roles, or was that tier based on like a SDR role, but then, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4?
Yeah, good question. A little bit of both, Donald, and this kind of comes to the original question you asked about kind of team formation and what does a mature team look like and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We started people at Looker when we had a larger team. We started people in an inbound only role, so talking to warmer leads and doing qualification and things like that. That was kind of our level 1. Level 2 was either a senior inbound SDR or a junior outbound SDR, depending on what we needed in the company. And then levels 3 and level 4 were supporting larger and larger sales segments. So moving from SMB to mid-market to commercial to enterprise.
Gotcha. But still within that SDR role, and then eventually you can graduate to like an AE.
That's right.
Cool. Makes sense. I might have folks who are listening to this and they're like, man, Kyle, I got a couple folks on the team. What you're telling me here, I'm having some second guess, and I don't know if they are gonna last. But I don't want to cut. I've already invested so much. I don't know when to cut someone loose.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on that.
If people are not succeeding in the role, they're not enjoying it. And if they're not enjoying it, then you need to help them find something new.
Yeah.
And whether that's a reinvention of themselves at your company into a new role, or whether that's helping them find something new at a different company, it's in everybody's best interest to do that. And sort of similar to what I said about performance discussions being ongoing, setting the stage for this role, this any sales role, being a performance based role should start during the interview. So
Mm.
when you're interviewing people, make it crystal clear that this is what will happen when, if performance is down, you'll get every modicum of support you could possibly get from management. If that still's not going well, here's what a performance plan would look like. If that performance plan isn't satisfied, we're going to have to go our separate ways. Are you cool signing up for that? And set that expectation from the jump. And that's a good way to, make sure that you're getting the right people who have the right mindset. You might lose some candidates that you're really excited about who might decide like, hey, you know what, this isn't right for me. And that's certainly happened to me before. But then more tangibly, if you do have somebody who is not performing well, you owe it to them and you owe it to yourself to create a plan that is actually possible to achieve on, because I've seen some performance plans that are like impossible and unfair. So you have to create a plan that's possible, and it has to have both quantitative results oriented and effort based type measurements, as well as qualitative like attitude based things, because a lot of times it's the attitude that suffers more than anything else.
Yeah.
And so much of sales is just having the right attitude, having the right approach. If you can try and correct that in a performance plan, that's typically a good way to right the ship. If they don't perform against it, then like I said, you have to help them transition out of the company and find something new.
Yeah, so true on that, man. Well, I have a few more questions and we'll get ready to wrap up here. But let's say you mentioned your sales stack. Is there anything else that you have in your sales stack? So it sounds like you have Navigator, you have Outreach or something like that. Anything else, Zoom, anything else that you would recommend that people have in their sales stack that's not going to be too, because I know sometimes people get too far to the right with so much, and then sometimes people have nothing and they just kind of like go wild,
Yeah.
wild west it.
Well, back to the shameless promotion, the shameless plugs. I mean, you got to have Clary.
There
Goes
you
without
go.
saying. Um,
And it is a
no,
great
you hit
tool, by
on.
the way, guys. I'm recommending. This is my second Clary interview, and I highly recommend you check them out.
Appreciate that. You got to have Sales Navigator. You've got to have some sort of tool to get leads from Sales Navigator into your CRM. Sales Nav makes that somewhat possible, but not as efficient as you need it to be. We
Yeah.
use a tool called Lead IQ. I've mentioned a couple times. Lead IQ actually helps skip a step. You can export people directly from LinkedIn into Outreach, which is really nice. Put them into different sequences right from there. And then Outreach we use, obviously. And then one we haven't talked at all about is Sendoso for direct mail. Obviously, direct mail is a little bit different here now that we're all working from home, but there's certain e-gift fulfillment that's really helpful. Some people view it as like kind of a shady sales tactic to incentivize meetings, but it's not if you do it the right way. And the right way to do it is via personalization. So
Yeah.
if I'm researching you, Donald, and I find out that you're a fan of what's your favorite sports team?
You know, I gotta love my crappy Dolphins. Come on, bro.
There you go. So maybe I could send you like a biography on Dan Marino or something like that in the mail, and hey, maybe you'll like that. And it's just a different touch point. It's not to bribe you. It's just to show you like, hey, we have taken the time to think about you as somebody who's more than just a target. We're thinking about you as somebody who has, interests outside of work, and maybe take a meeting and learn a little bit about what we're trying to do and how we might be able to help you. So direct mail is really, really nice to stand out from the crowd. Those are basically it. Those are the main tools that we use to execute.
Well, I'm a big believer in direct mail, so I don't think it's shady at all. One of the things that we employ internally is the 15-minute virtual coffee meeting.
Yep, love
So we
that.
send them a $5 Starbucks gift card and handwritten card. That's my caveat, though. I'm like, you can't send something out that's not going to be either look handwritten or it is personalized. So personalized card, and send it out to them, and our admin team will, by all means, they'll take care of that and get them delivered, but they lead to appointments and then leads to conversation, and people appreciate it. Like you said, you think about them, and you can go a little bit deeper with, like you said, with other tools. I love it.
Yeah. Don't just send out your company swag, by the way. Like,
No.
People have enough of that garbage, and that's not what personalization is.
Here is a nice lip balm for you. It's winter. Come on. Give me something good, man. All right. So here we're running to the end here. The last question I have for you is, I'm an SDR. I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, Kyle is amazing. This guy is, grabbed my attention. I like what he's sharing. I would love to work on a team like that. But I want to know, what's the one major piece of advice you're giving to this person? They're just starting off. They been for a month in their role. But what's the one piece of advice you give that person so that they can succeed as an SDR? And then we'll do another one. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to the manager to help those to build a successful team?
Yeah. Let me start with the second question first, if you don't mind, which is treat your SDR team as strategic thought partners of yours and not as cogs in a machine. I've talked about this. We've talked about this already. But the best ideas are going to come from them. And then you are doing yourself and your team and your company a disservice if you don't listen to them for ideas and for changes and for feedback every single step of the way. So when you're hiring people, you need to screen for hiring people who can think, not just do. They need to be able to do both of those things. And it's super, super important.
Love it.
So then for the first question, what my advice for an individual SDR is develop cross-functional relationships inside of your company. The more you understand about how the sausage is made internally, the better you'll be able to have conversations with people on the phone. So much of prospecting is just about confidence, and so much confidence is born just of having expertise on your product or on your range of services or on the personas that you're speaking to. So get to know those personas internally, what they care about, what their day-to-day looks like, how they use your product if they're using it internally. It's just, it accelerates your learning curve so much. And when you're ready to make your next step, maybe it's not into a sales role or into a manager role on the SDR team. Maybe it's into their department. And so that relationship already exists, and you're just widening the scope of the impact that you make on the company.
Love that, man. Well, Kyle, let's talk about Clary. If folks out there is interested in learning about that, how did they go about getting access to it? And why don't you give us a plug on how it could benefit them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Clary is a revenue operations platform that is useful for every single person across your entire revenue organization, from SDRs to individual people to sales leadership to marketers and everything in between. It is just for individual reps a super easy way to manage all of your open opportunities, and for sales leadership and for marketing leadership to forecast what is going to happen in the future. So Clary reads through a couple years of your CRM history, understands the signals and the things that matter and what influences your deals, and then assigns a score from 0 to 100 to every single open opportunity you have, new business and renewals, so that you know which of your opportunities are trending well and which ones you aren't. And then it uses all of that data science and all that machine learning to spit out a forecast for where you're going to end up in the quarter. So in like week 1 of the quarter, our forecast is within 5% accuracy, and our CRO, who you talk to, is very pleased with that.
Yeah.
So use cases galore across. I only scraped the surface of what Clary can do, but check it out. It's pretty cool.
Awesome, man.
Clary.com. And normally the way that we will do things is we'll set up a quick call with you, understand exactly what you're trying to do, and then give you like a 5 or 10 minute demo or something like that. And if you like what you see, then you can do a deeper dive in another call.
That sounds fair enough. And I think there's some value in that. So I recommend it, folks. Check it out. You can find all the details back in the show notes. And you're on LinkedIn as well. Very active.
Yeah. So I one of my New Year's resolutions was to try and think and write every day, and it turns out the only thing I think and write about is work. And so LinkedIn is a perfect outlet for that. So it's my handle on LinkedIn, I guess, is just Kyle T. Coleman. And it's the only social channel I'm active on. So I'm not a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. I don't even know what TikTok is still. So find me on LinkedIn.
All right, it's some videos. Don't worry about that for now. But listen, man, I appreciate you taking the time to come on a show and share some wisdom, man. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Cheers, man. Thanks so much, Donald.
Hey everyone, that was Mr. Kyle Coleman. And if you enjoyed the content today, if you enjoyed learning about Kyle, I encourage you to go ahead and connect with him. You can find all of his contact information below, or you can always go to our website, thesalesevangelist.com. To search for this particular episode, just type thesalesevangelist.com/ the word episode number 1283. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/ the word episode numbers 1283. Listen, thank you so much for taking the time to watch our episode today, for listening to us, and for being a part of our community. We truly appreciate it. Thank you. Go ahead and hit subscribe, and make sure you always stay tuned. We want to make sure we help you to find more of those ideal customers. We want you to build stronger value. We want you to close more deals. But most importantly, we want to challenge you each and every single day to go out and do big things. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up at the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.